it was set up perfectly. The Sacramento Kings inside the Golden One Center. A chance to win and end the playoff drought, clinch the playoffs for the first time in 16 years. And the Kings don't get it done. The biggest game in the history of the Golden One Center, the biggest Sacramento Kings game in the last 16 years. The Sacramento Kings fans showed up, but the offense did not. We'll break down the Kings' loss to the Minnesota Timberwolves 119-115 and why the head is saying everything's okay. The Kings are a playoff team. It's only a matter of time before they clinch. But the heart is saying, man, this is just a colossal letdown for Sacramento Kings fans who are ready to celebrate the playoff drought coming to an end together. You are listening to Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time. Time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all regular season long and soon to be all postseason long. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports reporter and producer for ABC 10 News. I'm currently sitting here on the concourse right by the main entrance, where before the game this was a sea of Sacramento Kings fans who were piling into the Golden One Center with the expectation that tonight was going to be a celebration. Many of us were calling it Clinchmas, and maybe that was the problem. Maybe we shouldn't have expected it as much as we did, considering the Minnesota Timberwolves are a very good basketball team, a team that the Sacramento Kings have really struggled against. Now that the Kings have lost to the Timberwolves, they're the only team the Kings have lost to 3 times this season. So maybe we shouldn't have expected for things to go the Sacramento Kings' way as much as we did tonight. But I've heard from a lot of people on social media, even some media members here, some fans here, saying maybe this night was overhyped to begin with. I disagree with that completely, because here was an opportunity for the playoff drought to come to an end. It's been 16 years, and we know what's happened over those 16 years, right? We don't always have to rehash it, from the relocation saga to just the countless losing seasons to the coming and goings of coaches, players, front offices. The hype was justified for tonight's game. The ability for the Sacramento Kings in their arena in front of 18,000 fans to secure their playoff spot, clinch the playoffs, and also with a win tonight, they would have clinched home court advantage. So I don't think tonight was overhyped by any means. Maybe our expectations were a little bit unrealistic, or maybe we didn't give the Minnesota Timberwolves as much credit or as much respect as we should have coming into this game. But ultimately, look, the Sacramento Kings are fine, right? They're going to be okay. They're more than likely going to clinch in Portland later on this week in their next 2 games, back-to-back games against the Portland Trail Blazers, right? They just need one win over these final, I think, 6 games, and they're in, right? So it's only a matter of time. It's inevitable. We've seen this team play all year long. We know the Sacramento Kings are a playoff team, right? That's what the brain says. And in reality, I think we're all going to wake up tomorrow morning, even those of us that are very disappointed, maybe upset by how tonight's game went. We're all going to wake up tomorrow morning and go, it's another day. It's fine. You move on. You move forward. The progress of the season is not erased by this night, nor are their chances of the playoffs. This wasn't a scenario where the Sacramento Kings absolutely had to win for their chance to get in or not. And if they lose, then they're completely out. Not the case at all. So the Sacramento Kings are going to be fine, right? We can establish that right off the bat. But I think it's important to acknowledge what the heart is saying, right? This night, Sacramento Kings fans deserved. They did. I mean, it's okay to say that. It's okay to be really let down or really disappointed or extremely underwhelmed by how this night went, right? A lot of times in sports, stories just write themselves and they make sense, and you get those storybook endings. Now, I'm not saying that the Kings clinching the playoffs and just making it is the storybook ending. The storybook ending for this franchise is winning a championship and bringing a championship here to Sacramento. That's the storybook ending. I don't know if that's going to happen this year. Hopefully that's going to happen in the next handful of years. We're not talking about a storybook ending in that sense, but if you're talking about writing the story of the Sacramento Kings surprise season where they come out of nowhere and they return to the playoffs and they clinch the playoffs for the first time in 16 years, it just feels better, it feels right, it sounds right for that to happen in this building, in this city, in front of this fan base that has suffered for as long as Sacramento Kings fans have. Now, the real moment is still to come. The moment is going to be the first playoff game that's in this building, which more than likely is going to be game 1 of the opening round, which, regardless of opponent, that's tremendous for the Sacramento Kings to accomplish that. We were just hoping that the Kings would somehow get in and get themselves into a guaranteed best of 7 series, so we'd have a guaranteed 2 games, games 3 and 4 at the very, very least in this building. The Kings are in a much better position than that, so much so that now they're shifting expectations to, hey, maybe the Kings should be winning the first round of the playoffs since they're going to more than likely have home court advantage. It's okay for anyone who, whether you left the Golden One Center tonight, I know there were like 3,000 to 4,000 more fans, or at least I was told. I shouldn't say I know. I was told. I didn't go outside, but I was told there were another few thousand fans out in Doco and in the bars in the surrounding downtown Sacramento ready to celebrate here, even though it was a Monday night, ready to celebrate the Sacramento Kings clinching. Like this city, 20,000 people, they were ready to have a great time. It's okay if you were one of those 20,000, or if you were watching from home somewhere in Sacramento or Northern California or around the world, around the country. It does not matter. If you are disappointed, or underwhelmed, frustrated, feeling let down by tonight, of course there's nothing wrong with that. And I think the Sacramento Kings, the players, the coaches, the front office, they understand that disappointment. Now, I'm not going to play any post-game audio for you because I don't really think it's worth it, but De'Aaron Fox spoke post-game, and clearly he was not too happy after this loss. Why would he be? And he was asked about how disappointed he was with the Kings not, given the circumstances, the Kings not winning tonight. And one of the lines that he said was, "We just lost a game. It's not the end of the world." I know some fans, I've already seen some fans react negatively to that. Hey, De'Aaron, read the room. This means so much to the franchise. Don't just downplay it. In reality, De'Aaron's absolutely right. Like the Kings, there's a chance, and if I'm understanding the clinching scenarios correctly, there's a chance that the Kings could clinch tomorrow without even playing. Of course, to us, to me, to fans, that wasn't the ideal scenario. We don't want the Kings to, we're happy for the Kings to clinch. It's another thing De'Aaron said in his press conference. He said, look, there's no scenario where clinching is a bad thing. Right? But there's certainly ideal scenarios and less ideal scenarios. The Sacramento Kings clinching last night with a Warriors win and a T-Wolves loss was a less ideal scenario. The Sacramento Kings clinching tomorrow or clinching by any circumstance where the Kings don't actually play and another team gets them in, it's less ideal than the Kings doing it in front of 18,000 in this building. So if you're disappointed, if you're let down, you're absolutely justified. Like, I work for ABC 10 News. I was in meetings all day long. I went to shoot around this morning at 10 a.m. I've been in and around this arena for like 14 hours today. I've been building it up. I've been hyping it up. I was up till 4 a.m. this morning. I couldn't sleep last night because I was thinking what I was going to do for the Locked On Kings podcast, how I was going to capture the moment, and how I was going to be able to celebrate correctly and represent this fan base as best as I possibly could. I was thinking about that and trying to put weigh that in my mind, and it kept me up way later than I should have been last night, right? So I'm not saying it's just the fans that are doing this. We in the media were doing this. We were writing stories. We were writing articles. We were ready to talk about a triumphant moment for the city. None of us got that. So yes, tonight is a disappointing night. You can understand the significance of the Kings' chances to clinch the playoffs. You can acknowledge the fact that the Kings are more than likely going to be a playoff team and still be disappointed with how this night ultimately went and still be let down by the Sacramento Kings not winning this game here tonight. What I don't want to do is what I have seen on Twitter, and some of it has been directed at me, and that's fine. If it makes you feel better than directed at me, you know what, I can take it. But I saw some Kings fans clapping back at fans, clapping back at me for actively rooting for the Timberwolves to win last night in Golden State so the Sacramento Kings could have this opportunity to clinch here. I'm not necessarily saying they're blaming me, saying that it's my fault, but we don't have to do this because you can't hold it against any fan. And remember, I come from a place of being a Sacramento Kings fan too. Even though I work in the media, even though I cover this team professionally, I've grown up a fan of this team. I wanted this moment in the Golden One Center selfishly as a fan just as much as I wanted it as a media member. So there's nothing wrong with fans who wanted to have this moment here. And if it makes you feel better to blame them or have some kind of victory lap saying, see, you shouldn't have rooted against it, as if we had control over that result. Look, if you want to be mad at anybody, be mad at Draymond Green for turning the ball over, allowing Cat to hit that transition three that ultimately won the game for the Minnesota Timberwolves. Be mad at Draymond if you want. Be mad at the Warriors. There's no reason to be mad at Kings fans who actively wanted the opportunity tonight that the Sacramento Kings simply did not live up to. That's not the fault of the fans. It's not the fault of anybody who is rooting against the Minnesota. If it makes you feel better, fine, I guess be like that. But in reality, we shouldn't be doing that to each other, right? Hey, you're right. Maybe it would have been better. The Kings would have clinched by now, and tonight would have been a celebration regardless of the final score. Either way, we all want the same thing, and the Kings are ultimately going to accomplish the same thing. The Kings are going to clinch the playoffs. It is going to be okay. But let's talk about tonight a little bit. Let's break down tonight and tonight's game a little bit and tonight's performance. First and foremost, I could have cared less about what happened in the Phoenix game and the Clipper game. No surprise at all that the Kings didn't get any help from the Utah Jazz and the Chicago Bulls. Doesn't surprise me at all that Phoenix won. Didn't surprise me at all that the Clippers won. I expected it. This Kings team has always been about, hey, control your own destiny. To me, this was always about the Kings win and they lose, and it's on to the next day or on to the next clinching scenario. I wasn't really putting too much hope or faith or even interest in the Phoenix Suns losing or the Los Angeles Clippers losing, and I don't think the Kings really were either. But when we're looking at the way this game went, there were a lot of things the Sacramento Kings did tonight that were very uncharacteristic, and I'll give you a few examples. First and foremost, this offense is historically good. Factually, it's historically good. They average 121 points per game. They're the best offense in the NBA, one of the best offenses in NBA history, the best offensive rating in NBA history. It is factual. There has not been an offense like the Sacramento Kings offense. And the fact that offense did not show up tonight, it's unfortunate. It's very unfortunate. Now, we have to give credit, of course, to the Minnesota Timberwolves. Defensively, they did an excellent job taking the Sacramento Kings out of their game. The Kings did not get out in transition. They got forced into a kind of half-court versus half-court slugfest type game, which I'm not saying the Sacramento Kings can't win playing that style and can't be better than the Timberwolves playing that style. That just plays more into the Timberwolves' strengths than the Kings playing in transition, getting those good transition three looks, getting to the rim, attacking the basket. The Kings' offense tonight was not nearly as good as we know it has been and can be, right? I'm not saying that it's an anomaly. I'm just saying it's how the Kings performed offensively tonight is uncharacteristic of how this team has performed consistently throughout the course of this season. And yet the Sacramento Kings still lost by only 4 points. The Sacramento Kings did not play well tonight. Can we be honest? The Kings did not play well tonight, and yet they had multiple chances to win. The Kings shot 5 of 27, 18.5% from three-point range. 5 made threes in a game. That's the lowest total for the Sacramento Kings. It's not even close this year. So the Kings could not buy a bucket anywhere from beyond the perimeter. And on top of that, the Sacramento Kings did finish with 5 players in double figures, but that stat is a little bit misleading because the Kings only had 3 players in double figures early on in the fourth quarter. So really I'm not necessarily saying in garbage time, but the Kings didn't get up to 5 players finishing in double figures until mid to late fourth quarter. And if you look back, and we've talked about this a lot on Locked On Kings over the course of this season, you look back to the box scores and the consistent way the Sacramento Kings have been winning, it's been with 6, sometimes 7 guys finishing in double figures, which the T-Wolves did have 7 guys in double figures tonight. For the majority of this game, it was 3 guys that were carrying the load. Those 3 were De'Aaron Fox, Domantas Sabonis, and Harrison Barnes. Those 3 guys combined for 72 points. They shot a combined 26 of 46 from the field. That's 56% from those 3. The rest of the team, 42 points, 13 of 38 from the field, 34% from the field. The Kings did not get nearly enough help when team offense is normally their strength and their identity. They did not have that tonight. Now, granted, again, give the Timberwolves credit for how they were playing the Kings defensively, forcing the Kings into the half court. And, of course, Rudy Gobert is as good as he is down low, although Domantas Sabonis, I thought, did a really good job against Rudy Gobert. If the Kings and Timberwolves end up playing together in a playoff series, I know that makes a lot of fans nervous. I guarantee you there would be some chippiness or there would be some kind of moment between Rudy Gobert and Domantas Sabonis for how physical they played down low. So it's not like the Timberwolves shut the Sacramento Kings down simply because Rudy Gobert was in the middle. The Timberwolves did a good job. They tried to deny the three at times, but the Sacramento Kings also straight up were missing wide open threes. And when it came to gotta have it buckets, momentum changing buckets, with the exception of Domantas Sabonis' dunk in the second quarter, right at the end of halftime when the Kings made a little bit of a push and ended up taking a, I think, 1-point lead into the halftime break. With the exception of that dunk, the Sacramento Kings missed every single big momentum swinging shot tonight. There were a number of them in their fourth quarter. There were a few of them in the third quarter. There was one in the fourth quarter, Keegan Murray's three, that had it gone in, the Kings would have been down just 3 points with 30 seconds left. Not to mention, this building would have exploded. And fans, y'all were excellent tonight. The Sacramento Kings didn't give you a lot to cheer for. And again, credit to the Minnesota Timberwolves. I think the Timberwolves did a really good job taking the Sacramento Kings crowd out of the game. But that doesn't mean this fan base wasn't itching to explode tonight. They were very much waiting for that big moment. Very much rumble. It's like they were marinating all night long, just waiting for that pop. And they got a couple small pops, but that big pop never came because that big shot never fell. That's uncharacteristic of this team. Consistently, whether it's in this building or on the road, the Sacramento Kings have had that big shot when they've needed it from somebody, and tonight they couldn't get it from anybody. That's not like this team. Not like this team at all. Also, De'Aaron Fox tonight, I think he had 20 points at halftime. He looked really, really good in the first half. He scored just 5 points in the fourth quarter, went 1 of 7 from the field in the fourth quarter. Again, I feel like I have to say it. Credit to the Timberwolves. They did a good job not allowing De'Aaron to get to his spots. De'Aaron was also just straight up missing shots. Fourth quarter, De'Aaron Fox, he's been the most clutch player in the league. He's already a shoo-in for the Clutch Player of the Year award. Maybe we can't expect him to do it 82 times a season, every single night. But the Kings needed it from him tonight if they wanted a chance to win. Unfortunately, they didn't get it. Again, uncharacteristic of this Kings team. Also, in addition to that, straight up, the Kings just let the T-Wolves beat them. The T-Wolves just came in here and beat the Kings. They came out, they established the tone, they took the Sacramento Kings crowd out of it, and the Kings crowd was hype pregame and hype during tip-off. The Timberwolves took them out of it, and the Kings allowed themselves to get beat by Jaden McDaniels and Naz Reid. Now, no disrespect to the two of those players. They're solid players. But Jaden McDaniels should not be scoring 20 points and shooting 8 of 15 from the field. Naz Reid should not be scoring 18 points and shooting 7 of 12 from the field. Those two players really were the Kings' killers tonight. Jaden McDaniels had it right out of the gate. He established himself offensively very early on. And then Naz Reid had some really big dunks and just some really big moments. Also hit a big three in the fourth quarter to kind of put the game on ice. These are two guys that the Sacramento Kings can't allow themselves to get beat by. If you had told me before the night started that Anthony Edwards would finish the game with 17 points, I would have told you the Sacramento Kings won. Because we knew Karl Anthony Towns wasn't going to play. Anthony Edwards loves playing in this gym. He usually torches the Kings in this gym. I was expecting Anthony Edwards to carry the Timberwolves. If the Timberwolves are going to win, it was going to be on the back of Anthony Edwards. 17 points for Anthony Edwards, the Sacramento Kings should be winning that game. Instead, the Timberwolves beat the Kings at their own game in a lot of ways, and in addition to Edwards' 17, they had 6 other guys finish in double figures. They won as a team. And in a lot of ways, the Timberwolves kind of stole, let's use this for like a wrestling analogy. The Timberwolves came in and stole the Sacramento Kings moves and stole the Kings finisher and pinned them with it. That's what it looked like tonight. This episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. With the NCAA tournament going on right now, we are close to the Final Four. Now I've reached the Final Four with the NBA playoffs looming. This is the perfect time for you to start jumping in on the action at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. That's because right now FanDuel is giving new customers a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet does not win. So just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon and sign up today to claim your no-sweat first bet, a.k.a. basically an insurance policy. FanDuel wants you to continue playing, having fun, and making money based off of your sports knowledge. They don't just want you to come, deposit money, lose it on 1 to 2 bets and then never come back and just have a bad experience. The no sweat first bet basically says you're either going to make money on winning that bet, or you can get $1,000 of free bonus bets to continue betting, make that money back, and then some on FanDuel, because FanDuel is a lot of fun. It's safe, secure, super easy to use. You can wager on anything from the money line to point spreads to which team will be cutting down the net at the NCAA tournament. So don't miss your shot at a no sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. Make every moment more with FanDuel. So as of now, as of tonight, if the playoffs started tomorrow, the Sacramento Kings and the Minnesota Timberwolves would be facing each other in the opening round. Again, the Timberwolves are the only team this season, I believe. I'll have to double check this, but this was told to me, so I'm running with it. I trust who told it to me. The Sacramento Kings, or rather the Timberwolves, are the only team to beat the Sacramento Kings 3 times this season. If you tell me today that you feel extremely nervous if the Sacramento Kings and Minnesota Timberwolves went into a playoff series together, I would tell you you're absolutely justified. I would also tell you that the expectation would be and should be the Sacramento Kings winning that series. The expectation would be the Kings finding a way to figure it out. And there's 2 ways to kind of look at this, and I'm going to argue kind of with myself here, because I could look at tonight's game and just use this as a sample size, right? Tonight, the Sacramento Kings easily could, I shouldn't say easily, it's clear to see the Sacramento Kings' route to winning tonight's game. They hit shots. If the Sacramento Kings offense is the way that it normally is, if they're hitting the shots that they're normally hitting, the Sacramento Kings are in a much better position to win this game. I don't think it's fair to expect, or even reasonable to expect, that the Sacramento Kings will have a game where they only hit 5 3-pointers and hit only 18% of their 3-point attempts against the Minnesota Timberwolves at any point in the playoffs, regardless of how good the Timberwolves defense is. That's number 1. Number 2, and again, I'm arguing with myself here. I could turn that around and say, well, it's not just that the Sacramento Kings missed 3-pointers. The Sacramento Kings got to the free throw line 40 times tonight. So let's say that number is closer to their average, which is in the 20s, right? If the Sacramento Kings only got to the free throw line in the 20s tonight, still shot 80% like they did tonight, they lose this game by double digits. So sure, the Kings weren't hitting threes, but they were getting the foul line and were getting foul calls. So maybe those 2 cancel themselves out. Ultimately, the Timberwolves more than likely still win this game. The regular season context is extremely important. The expectation absolutely would be, if the Kings and Timberwolves played in a 7-game series, the expectation would be and should be the Kings would win that series, especially with home court advantage. But as the Timberwolves have shown, matchups really, really matter. Some teams just match up better. And the Kings really haven't played the Timberwolves too much at full strength with Karl-Anthony Towns. Let me tell you right now, honestly, regardless of who the Sacramento Kings play in the opening round, because there are arguments to be made for why the Kings could beat an opponent and why the Kings would lose to an opponent that's basically in the Kings' range, right? We're talking about the Golden State Warriors, we're talking about the Phoenix Suns, we're talking about the Minnesota Timberwolves. Those are the 3 most likely teams that the Sacramento Kings will be playing in the opening round at this point. Some of you would say there's no good option there. The Suns, if they have KD back, or I should say when they have KD back, yikes. The Golden State Warriors are the defending champions. The Minnesota Timberwolves have beat you 3 times during the regular season. Like, there's no good option there. I hear that completely. This is the one thing that I'm most concerned about at this point in time when it comes to the Kings and their playoffs. For some reason, the Kings have played their worst basketball at home. Have you noticed that? Now, the Kings technically have more home wins than they do road wins. The Kings are 23-16 at home. They're 22-14 on the road. But I would argue that the Kings have looked their most impressive this season on the road. Now, that can be a benefit during the postseason, of course. In theory, if the Sacramento Kings dropped one of their first 2 games, this team has proven that they're good enough on the road to make up for that if they need to and get themselves back into a series or even a series up. However, let's talk about the Golden State Warriors for an example, right? The Golden State Warriors are an extremely good team at home. They've been really, really bad on the road. Let's talk about this Warriors scenario. Let's say the Sacramento Kings and Golden State Warriors split the first 2 games. The Kings win game 1, the Golden State Warriors win game 2. I think the Kings should be really concerned in that scenario because the Golden State Warriors are so good at home, regardless of how good the Kings have been on the road. That team not only has the experience, that team's not only the defending champions, now they basically have home court advantage for the remainder of the series because the Kings couldn't defend their home floor. If the Kings cannot defend home court, regardless of who they're playing in the playoffs, they will not go far. And this advantage here in Sacramento should be one of the best, if not the best in the league, because of how passionate, how loud, how crazy this fan base is. The Kings need to figure out how to do a better job of protecting their home floor. They have not done a good job of it this season, despite having a 23-16 record. Like over 500, that's well over 500. That's good. But there have been a handful of losses, including tonight. Another team coming in on the second night of a back-to-back when the Kings have been rested, and the Kings losing that game. There have been a handful of games this season. The Charlotte loss, the loss to the Washington Wizards. Those are just the two big ones that come to mind right away. How bad they played against the Portland Trail Blazers in this building, right? There have been a handful of games in this building where the Sacramento Kings have looked their absolute worst, and a handful of games on the road where the Kings had no business winning and ultimately won because they overcame the odds and looked really, really good. Again, give and take, pros and cons to that, right? The Kings need to do better at taking advantage of that crowd that showed up tonight, because that crowd is only going to be louder and crazier and more hype for the playoffs. There's going to be no excuse for the Sacramento Kings losing at home other than they got beat by better, more established teams. If you want to use that excuse for the Golden State Warriors and you want to use that excuse for the Phoenix Suns, that's totally fine. Grant, I know the Minnesota Timberwolves have been to the playoffs before the Sacramento Kings have been to the playoffs. So in terms of experience, they have a slight edge. It's not big enough to make that an excuse for the Kings. If the Kings play the Timberwolves, no matter who they play in the opening round, they have to protect their home floor, or I'm telling you, they don't have a chance of winning the series. So as far as I know, the Sacramento Kings can technically clinch tomorrow, I believe. Now, we'll get more official mathematical wording and clinch scenarios from the NBA tomorrow. But from the conversations that I was having with people, our understanding is that if the New Orleans Pelicans, who are the, I think, 8th seed right now, defeat the Golden State Warriors, who have dropped down to the 7th seed with Minnesota moving up to 6. If the Warriors lose, the Pelicans win, and the Sacramento Kings clinch. They're in. I don't think that's clinching home court advantage, but that's clinching a top 6 seed. I believe. I hope that's right. I'm not 100% sure. So that could happen. If that doesn't happen, then I'm very confident that the Sacramento Kings will clinch or in Portland on Wednesday night. Very confident in that. Of course, I was confident in the Kings clinching tonight against the Minnesota Timberwolves, but compare the Minnesota Timberwolves to the Portland Trail Blazers, regardless of if it's at home or on the road, the Sacramento Kings should be beating the Portland Trail Blazers. Absolutely 100%. The expectation should be, if the Kings have not clinched by Wednesday's game, by Wednesday night, they will have clinched a playoff spot. Now, there's a chance that the Sacramento Kings, there's a chance that I, with ABC 10, go down to Portland to cover this potential clinching game on Wednesday night. If that's the case, of course, I will bring you Locked On Kings podcasts from Portland. I'll try and bring you as many behind-the-scenes looks as I can, exclusive interviews, anything that I can possibly get. I'll be honest with you, I don't want to travel. Not that I have anything against Portland. I've only been once in my life, and I would love to go back. I'm exhausted, and I think a lot of us in the media are exhausted. It's been over the last 3 days, I've worked over 54, 55 hours or something like that, all in build-up and all in preparation to tonight, which ultimately fell flat. So I would like to not go to Portland. If I go to Portland, of course, I will bring you the best content that I possibly can, covering it for ABC 10 as well. No matter what, though, after that game, tomorrow, if the Sacramento Kings do end up clinching, I'll have a celebration podcast with that. I do still want your videos of what the Kings clinching the playoffs means to you. A lot of you have already sent me your videos. I'm going to try and take as many as I can and compile them into a Locked On Kings segment so your voices can be heard and everybody can hear what this means to Sacramento, not just one guy from Sacramento trying to describe what it means to everybody. So please, you can send those videos to me. You can email them to me, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com. The easiest way, though, is if you're on Twitter, just DM them to me. @MattGeorgeSack on Twitter. Just DM them to me. Even if we don't follow each other, my DMs are open. You can just send those videos to me right then and there. I really would appreciate that. Of course, I appreciate so many of you that came up to me and said hi and chatted with me before the game or during halftime or whatever it was. This was my wife's first game of the season that she got to attend. Maybe she's the bad luck. I'm going to blame her and then probably get put in the doghouse, but you know what? That's fine. She and my sister-in-law were here to enjoy. They didn't get to see the beam, but they got to at least enjoy the atmosphere a little bit. But she got to see so many of you like interacting with me and supporting the podcast, and that meant a lot to her as well. So thank you for that support and for all the amazing and kind words. We'll get to celebrate together soon, I promise. And ultimately, again, the moment is still coming. The moment is the playoff game here in this arena, the first playoff game here in the Golden One Center. It's going to happen. No matter what happens tonight, it's going to happen, and we'll have that celebration together. We'll have the Clinch celebration together very soon. It's going to happen this week, and of course, we'll have all those celebrations, all the context that you could need, all the build-up to the playoffs, all the coverage of the playoffs, off-season, preseason, summer league, draft, regular season. We do it all right here for you on Locked On Kings. Many of you have been with me for the last 6 years now that I've been, 6 years? 7 years? 6 years that I've been hosting the podcast. Some of you are new. No matter how long you've been around or how big of a fan you are of the team or of me or of the podcast, I appreciate you so much. Thank you for your support. Unfortunately, not the night that we wanted tonight. A bit of a letdown, but we'll bounce back tomorrow just like we expect the Sacramento Kings to bounce back. Things are still going great here in Kingsland. The beam will be lit again soon. I can guarantee you that. Thank you so much for your support. Can't wait to have you join me on the next episode of Locked On Kings. Until then, my name is Matt George. You have been listening to the Locked On Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.